I'm going to cut right to it. I love old school essentials. I learned about old school essentials by Necrotic Gnome back around 2023/2022. I had never played any game that replicated 1981 BX DnD before. And as I played, both at conventions and online with friends, I realized one thing. This game is solid as a rock. So in this video, I'll be discussing old school essentials and its personal impact on me and some of the community. I'll be discussing what old school essentials is. I will also discuss some of its mechanics to illustrate how it's different from other OSR games like DCC and different to traditional fantasy games like 5e. Furthermore, we will go over its reception and Kickstarter and some of the community surrounding it, as well as some of the community support. I'm hoping by the end of this video you'll find a greater appreciation for not only old school essentials, but for what it means for the greater OSR and respective RPG community. So adventurers, light your torches. Don't forget to pack a 10-foot pole and grab your trusty rock, because we are discussing old school essentials and everything about it. And side note, this isn't a review of the game with in-depth discussion on magic, on world building, on building strongholds, or creating characters for the many various classes, nor is it a discussion on all of the classes in, say, Carcass Crawler or Advanced Fantasy. This is talking about the overall game and its reception. Old School Essentials is an old school, quote-unquote, restatement of the popular Basic Expert, aka BX DnD. And as I said before, this game is published by Necrotic Gnome. Old School Essentials, which we refer to as OSE, brings the mechanics and principles of 1981's BX DnD by Tom Muldavi to a modern audience. OSE aims to bring dungeon crawling, hex crawling, character creation, stronghold creation, and the wonders of cleric and divine magic and arcane magic all in one roof, the layout that is easy to understand and entirely compatible with all the OSR adventures and modules that are out there. In fact, the game has a design history that always reflects a deep appreciation for BX DnD. The game was originally called BX Essentials. Necrotic Gnome changed this name due to accessibility. Unfortunately, most people, especially new tabletop role-playing game enjoyers and 5e players, will not know what the acronym BX stands for. In fact, BX Essentials served as a collection of separate booklets that synthesized the BX Muldavi system into a modern format. For instance, much of the cover art in the BX Essentials books are reminiscent of the Back Me series of books. The cover pages mirror the motifs of the past Back Me games. Furthermore, the base rules are available for free on a Google Doc, allowing for easy sharing to others and for people to see development of BX Essentials, which would eventually become OSE. So, BX Essentials serves as an early precursor for Necrotic Gnome prior to the Kickstarter. It shows how much Gavin Norman and the rest of the team were carrying on the ethos of creating an accessible game that newcomers to OSR communities as well as old grognards can come to for a fun and engaging time. Old School Essentials then is the follow-up to BX and was kickstarted with phenomenal success. The project launched in April 12, 2019 and was funded in under 2 hours. It was on April 13th that all of the current stretch goals at that time were unlocked. Some of those being a referee screen of artwork by Pat Mullen, 3 various character sheets, and a rules reference website, which we are calling the SRD website. The team eventually expanded their stretch goal, and even those were kicked out of the water. The final funding goal was reached at around 120,000 euros. The final stretch goal was a upgraded version of the rules tome and core rules in the black box. This included a final set of full color art plates for those who opted into that. Thus, the Kickstarter met 1,069% of its goal, and by the end made over $160,390. So the Kickstarter was a phenomenal success that would gradually expand into further expansions and additional material. We understand that OSE was a financial success and was largely desired, especially by OSR nerds. That success is because of how OSE replicates BX's gameplay loop. To show this, I will break down the most important process to any Dungeons and Dragons game: character creation. In fact, I will compare character creation OSE to Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition and Dungeon Crawl Classics. I'm doing this not to say one system is inherently better than the other. Rather, I want to show how each of these systems' character creation, design, and process make them unique games. More specifically, I want to show how OSE's simplicity and reorganization as a BX DnD game works in its own specific favor as an OSR restatement. Final point: if you wish to skip all this technical part and go on to discussing the game's reception, skip to here on the screen. I also won't go into any expanded material or into much detail on character creation for any of these games, since this video is already going to be long enough. The defining characteristics of OSE character creation is that it's fast and bare bones. It simply focuses on getting you into the game rather than providing you long, extensive backstory or extra reading material that you probably won't check. There are 13 steps of character creation. Since this is a basic character creation, I'm going to create a fighter, thief, and magic user for each of the respective games. This will allow me to decision all bases of the game and its respective mechanics. I use Necrotic Gnome's character generator to save time, but rolling a character took me around 15 minutes each for OSE. I'll bet it may take you more or less the time depending on your familiarity on the modifiers, what equipment you want, abilities, and choosing/rolling for spells. For this example, let's start off with our team: Barney the fighter, Darnie the thief, and Larnie the magic user. They are a group of siblings who have decided to start adventuring. The group is going into the depths of the purple snake, in part because of treasure, and also because it claimed their cleric a week earlier. Hey, I needed a reason in the fiction not to include a cleric. I didn't want to give myself that much work. Anyhow, for the fighter in OSE, they get the ability to use all types of weapons and armors, as well as the ability to create a stronghold as long as they have the funds and time. That's all they get at level 1. Darnie the thief, on the other hand, has some unique skill options that they are trained in. That means Darnie the thief serves a specific purpose that Barney the fighter nor Larnie the wizard can resolve easily. Beyond that, they are noticeably weaker than the fighter and are not blessed in the arcane like the magic user, at least until level 10. Their character sheet is largely bare bones, excluding their skills and abilities that they uniquely get and allow them to succeed at roles and things that the other two characters can't succeed in unless it's extremely dangerous or they have the right tools for the job. Larnie the magic user is a smart person, but like with many of their respective siblings, they aren't packing much. They have arcane magic. This allows them to spend time and money doing magical research, spell casting, and using magic items, unlike most of the other classic classes. Additionally, at first level, wizards only have one spell that they know from the spellbook. DCC, or Dungeon Crawl Classics, is all about flavor, Gonzo sensibilities, and the flexibility of playing characters who will eventually become powerhouses in a short amount of time. In this case, many of the characters, especially after 0th level, gain a lot of abilities, more strength, and more capabilities than the average BX character. For instance, Barney the fighter at level 1 has a lot more utility. They have the Mighty Deed of Arms, they have crit tables and fumble tables that are expanded. They also have the ability to add luck modifiers to their attack rolls and to their damage rolls, if I am correct. As we can see in the warrior section, there is more utility and generally more flavor text and is way more descriptive in details. This is not to say that Barney cannot die from a stray goblin arrow or from getting hit in the face with a big boulder or rock. Rather, DCC Barney out of the gate of level 1 is more capable than OSE Barney. I've heard that DCC reflects more of 3rd edition and later editions of D&D because the characters feel more strong, more capable, and have more abilities. And the game is less reliant on player intuition and is more reliant on players rolling the right skills. But it's not too reliant on that like 5e. Nevertheless, let's move on to Darnie. DCC Darnie has access to a lot more abilities, a lot more specific skills than the OSE thieves. Let's compare. The OSE thieves have this: backstab, climb shared surfaces, find and remove treasure and traps, hear noises, hide in shadows, move silently, open locks, and pick pockets. DCC thieves have backstab, sneak silently, hide in shadows, pick pockets, climb to your surfaces, pick locks, find traps and disable traps, forge documents, disguise selves, read languages, handle poison, and they can cast spells from scrolls, which they get out of the gate at level 1. A thief in OSE, as I said earlier, can only do this at level 10, and that requires 280,000 of EXP, assuming you're only using goldless EXP rolls. Finally, they have luck and wits, which allows thieves to use a luck die which can be expended to aid in skill rolls, attack rolls, or damage rolls. So as we can see, DCC Darny is just packing more heat. They have more tools in their thieves tools. Laugh, please. This greatly increases their power and capability rather than them simply relying on player ingenuity and tactical play. Larny the Wizard is just as frail as an OSE. They only have 1d4 plus their con of HP at level 1, so he is working with that. Their utility and casting levels, though, in DCC are far superior in terms of power level and the amount of times you can cast. The wizard in lore has a supernatural patron that powers their magic. Furthermore, a wizard's luck modifier applies to rolls for corruption and mercurial magic, which are specific to DCC, and I won't be going into this video, so don't worry about that. However, the biggest benefit to Larny in their DCC journey in the pits is the spell burn ability. The wizard has options to give up their own flesh, i.e. temporarily lowering ability scores 1-to-1, such as strength, agility, and stamina to add to their spell check, as well as using luck afterwards to upcast even more. Wizards in DCC can be seen as bombs ready to go off at any moment, while magic users in OSE are more like bombs collecting energy the stronger and more knowledgeable they become over their journey. Thus, the DCC classes have more abilities and features that define them. It's not as bare bones as OSE, and as we can see, while it does retain some of its old school principles like the die rolls and the Vancian magic, it's not the same. Finally is Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. Barney the Fighter in D&D 5th edition just has a lot more abilities at their disposal. As we can see, they have fighting styles, they have second wind, they have maneuver abilities, but also 5e is built for mainly combat. So even when they don't have all that, they have all of the bonuses and benefits of, well, strength modifiers, the help action, and other resources that are clearly built into the game. There isn't much flexibility in terms of what you can or cannot do because the rules are written clearly to be interpreted as, well, rules as written. Obviously, this depends on the game master, as we can even see from the character sheet, there is just more going on in comparison to, say, OSE or even DCC. Furthermore, instead of 3d6 like OSE and DCC in most DCC and OSE games I've played, 5th edition Barney can roll 46 and keep the highest 3. Thus, 5e Barney is statistically going to be stronger no matter how many times we re-roll the character. Barney also has specific backgrounds as well as race options that benefit them statistically by giving them proficiencies and tools that can be helpful. In DCC, there are no inherent bonuses to being a human, or to one's occupation technically. The only thing you gain from an occupation from 0 level is your equipment and flavor and background. But like I said, those don't benefit you stat-wise. And in OSE, your background details are just stuff you roll on a couple tables. They don't have any bearing on your stats. Therefore, 5th edition Barney is much more of a powerhouse and will likely scrape the floor with DCC and especially OSE Barney. As for Darny the Rogue and Larny the Magic User, these two characters, respectively, just have more going on. Like with Barney, let's take a look at their character sheets very quickly. For the Rogue and Wizard, respectively, they have a lot more options like with Barney. They have a combination of class features, backgrounds, racial bonuses, and possible feats that are just going to make these characters more superhero-like. For instance, Darnie's proficiency bonus as a rogue will help them with most dexterity-based skill checks, whether it's rolling to fix a trap or pickpocket. However, all actions that are risky by the nature of 5e come down to rolling and succeeding rather than players actively interacting with the world. As we can see, the process to creating a character and likewise implementing their mechanics into the game, while they will retain a similar ethos, are executed differently. More traditional games like 5th edition have gameplay loops that are more reliant on multiple abilities, grandiose backgrounds, and a high focus on combat. Legend Core Classics is a derivative of that formula. It is not mechanically dense as, say, 5th edition, but it makes up for it due to how the verbose material and how other class features all lead into each other, both in combat and out of combat. There is a sweet middle point, I think, between Gonzo fantasy, OSR gameplay, and hex crawling that can all combine into DCC. Old School Essentials sits as a restatement, aka the barest of bones of OSR games, because it has no interest in being either a traditional game or a remake of, say, Advanced Dungeons & Dragons or 3rd edition. In fact, restatement is the perfect way to explain OSE. OSE is not a remake or anything like Into the Odd, Errant, Morkborg, Advanced Fantasy Dungeon, Dungeon Crawl Classics, and DERF, to name a small portion of OSR games. Each of these respective games I mentioned have a twist. They mangle, deconstruct, or build off of the old school principles and primers. Thus, their character creation reflects that. Maybe it's in the tone, or the mechanics, or in how they name the stats, or in, say, the layout. But with Old School Essentials, it's bare bones. There's not much in terms of abilities. While we have talked about character creation and the Kickstarter, what about the additional material and community support? To start, Necrotic Gnome has quite a bit of free material that can help you get started playing old school Dungeons & Dragons. For instance, their Old School Essentials basic rules is the perfect primer for jumping right in for free. The basic rules is a fully illustrated sample of the basic rules of the game, and this includes how to create a character, the 4 base classes of D&D, which are Fighter, Magic User, Thief, and Cleric, adventuring gear and equipment, rules on magic, and a list of all first level Cleric and Magic User spells, as well as a chapter on adventuring discussing all sorts of situations like saving throws, ability checks, XP awards, encounters, combat, and dungeoning, to name a couple. This allows for new players and game masters / referees to jump right into playing OSE alongside providing 3 free versions of character sheets as well. Whether you like the more stylish underground version, the clean edginess of Vagabond, or the purist, there are a number of options. So as you can see, there's a number of free options to just get started now. There are also a lot of resources for the referee and or game master. The most well-known one by Necrotic Gnome is the Dungeon Time Tracker. This keeps track of, well, you being in the dungeon. It keeps track of torches and other resources that'll become important for any and all dungeon exploration. This is especially useful for players who are in their first levels who don't have a lot of resources, but no matter the case, this is helpful for keeping track of time, keeping track of, say, torch usage, and other miscellaneous things that become important when, well, dungeon exploring. In addition, any referee who wants to expedite the process of character creation and rules also has options to OSE's many generators. There are options for treasure, spells, magic items, NPCs, and so many more. This all culminates in OSE's Classic Fantasies system reference document, which is as well entirely free. It has all the rules I mentioned, just about the clean layout and art. Ultimately, if you want to get started playing and running OSE, there are resources available out there. I'm sure, however, there are more things you want. Fortunately, Necrotic Gnome has plenty of additional material in their collection. First and foremost, there is the core books, as well as the advanced fantasy books. Classic fantasy is everything from the SRD put into book format, For instance, the rules tome, which is the same thing as the classic game set, contains all of the material in the SRD amassed into a definitive book. Advanced Fantasy Expansion Set adds additional classes, monsters, magic, and treasure based off 1970s Advanced First Edition Dungeons & Dragons. So think of Advanced Fantasy as optional DLC for classic OSE. You don't need Advanced Fantasy, but if you want to play wicked new classes like the Acrobat, Knight, or Bard, or you want to have more monsters to pull from, you will need Advanced Fantasy Set. Necrotic Gnome also has a lot of supplemental material outside of Advanced Fantasy Expansion Set. The most well-known supplemental material is the Carcass Crawlers issue. There are currently 4 issues of Carcass Crawler, each providing new classes, races, weapons, skills, spells, new adventuring gear, tips for referees, optional guidelines, and even short adventures for referees to use or pull for inspiration. Carcass Crawler works best for people looking for a wide diversity of options, and each one offers something very different. Plus, I'm a personal fan of Carcass Crawler's issues 1 and 3 due to their awesome cover art and their additional classes. For instance, they have the Acolyte class from Carcass Crawler 1, and they have some race-specific classes such as Goblin from Carcass Crawler. In Carcass Crawler 3, they have some race-specific options like the Mycelium, which is a mushroom creature. Overall, Carcass Crawler is a perfect product if you want to bring advanced Dungeons & Dragons and extra material to your games. There are also a number of options to find adventures from Necrotic Gnome as well. There are adventure anthology sets 1 and 2, which are just a collection of adventures in a book by various authors and creatives. There are also single official adventure scenarios. I have ran the Hole in the Oak and played in Incandescent Grottos. I think the great selling point to these adventures is their layout. When I'm running a game or even playing a game, I want to be able to know what is important in a room. I want to know what factions might control this room, what counters could they face, and any important sites and other things that stimulate the 5 senses or more. Modules like the Hole in the Oak, which is an introductory adventure, give everything clearly written out. Here are some examples. The map of the adventure is on the first 2 pages of the book. It has clear labels for every room and includes the monsters as well. 2. There is a table detailing all of the treasure in the dungeon on page 7. 3. The area descriptions are clear and to the point. Rather than endless text about any bolding or indicators, they tell you exactly what is the floor, what's on the walls, what's in the room, and what directions the players can go. 4. In the back, there are suggestions on expanding the dungeon. You could have the players lead into the Incandescent Grottos if that's what they want, or you could just lead them into a sandbox campaign. That adventure, amongst the many others, is legible, easy to navigate, and accessible for new referees. So if you want to get your feet wet, then this is the perfect time to do so. Okay. I have been talking a lot about the material support that Necrotic Gnome has given to OSE. However, a tabletop role-playing game is more than just the developer and/or the creatives. It's also the community that creates content for them. What does that look like? Well, first off, OSE has an amazing Reddit page where people can share their own written material. People could advertise their own adventure modules, their own campaigns, a new Kickstarter project, or just their own homebrew material that they crafted up. The OSE Reddit page has a plethora of content and people asking strong and great questions about the game. While it might not be as big as, say, the OSR Reddit page or any of the massive forums like 10-Foot Pole, it specifically allows people to ask specific questions about the game and material without being fluttered or overwhelmed by the mentions of other games, adventures, miscellaneous questions about OSR rules, and mechanics outside of OSE's scope. With that being said, OSE's reputation as a restatement of BX means that there is a lot of material one can use. If it's not already obvious, you can use many of the TSR modules that exist, which date from 1978 all the way to 2000, which I didn't even know that there were people writing TSR modules in 2000. Nevertheless, if you're looking for an adventure/module, then there are plenty. You can use typical ones that have the typical coding convention like Palace of the Silver Princess, Horror on the Hill by Douglas Niles, or the many tournament modules that exist. There are just a plethora of them, as we can see from me scrolling through this Wikipedia page. Of course, I have to talk about my personal favorites, the ones that I found while just casually scrolling through itch.io and DriveThruRPG. Many of these I have not played. Rather, I have read through them, skimmed a little bit, and just thought, whoa, this stuff is freaking wicked. Without further ado, the first one on that list is the Temple of the Serpent Queen. This module is for 4 to 6 higher level adventurers. The cover art has this cool naga. It gives this sort of 1980s pulp energy. It is just everything. I just love this. I also just love nagas and snakes as a major combatant in games. It feels very old school D&D in my personal opinion. It reminds me a bit of popular modules like Dwellers of the Forbidden City, which I've been itching to play one of these days. 2. Dark Places and Demigorgons for Old School Essentials, the core book. This is 1980s reimagining of BX DnD. All I have to say is it gives off the vibes of being inspired by Stranger Things and 1980s media, obviously. So that concept alone, instilling that into BX DnD is spectacular, since BX DnD came out in the 1980s, so it's also self-referential. I love that. I love a medium that is self-referential and clearly leans into that. You play as these awesome teens who are trying to solve their problems and survive the night or day while dungeon crawling, exploring their local town. That's a cool concept. A 1980s dungeon crawl? Come on, that just reeks of awesomeness. Number 3, Prisoners of the Crimson Crystal. This is an OSE compatible adventure for low levels. While I didn't do too much gathering on this, I love Final Fantasy, I love pixel art, so when I saw that a game used pixel art as its major illustrations, I was blown away. Yes, we have games like Fabula Ultima and Break that take direct inspiration from JRPGs, but to pull directly from the art style of the 80s, 90s RPG and JRPG genre into BX DnD, that alone for the art is just fan-freaking-tastic. Number 4, Old School Solo. This is a supplement that helps run/play OSE games solo. I know many of us don't always have the time or ability to schedule an entire session or campaign with 3 to 6 other players or even more. So having an old school solo option is great for people who want to play solo games. And on that note, there are also plenty of other material to run solo games overall in OSR. I'll remember to put up 1 or 2 in the description box below. Old School Stylish, which is number 5. This removes the class system in favor of a style system. Players unlock style by traveling, adventuring to other places, and growing in their strength and knowledge. It pulls from wuxia, Final Fantasy, and other JRPG material. When I think of this, it gives this vibe of, well, a grand journey. It gives a more pulpy, a more modern sensibility, modern style to old school Dungeons & Dragons BX gameplay. I like that. It really lets players journey and adventure. Instead of just going on dungeons and killing innocent creatures, they have to actively interact with the community. They have to actively put themselves in harm's way. It gives a heroic lens while still being BX DnD. Also, there's anime. I like anime. I'm the anime gamer. That's kind of my thing. And number 6, Fiendish Friends. Monsters Go Adventuring. You ever wanted to play monsters and have a whole supplement to wreak havoc on the adventuring world? Well, Fiendish Friends is the perfect supplement for that. It adds on classes that are monster focused and rule suggestions and referee material to help you run a game that's not about humans adventuring, but about the lovely monsters that delve deep. I think it's a pretty cool concept. And plus, it's a nice reverse of the usual human adventurers and or elf/dwarf going into a dungeon and, extracting all of its material resources. And as you can clearly see, this is just scratching the surface. There is so much material for OSE, and that's only on DriveThruRPG. On itch.io, there's also plenty of materials as we see here. And I'm sure there's also materials on blog posts, Blogger, and other pages outside my scope. So if there is a specific OSE supplement, material, or handout that you think you want to share, please let me know down below in the comment section. I really want to see it. So, whether you have a broad interest in OSR or OSE, please let me know down below in the comment section. And while you're at it, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Despite me pouring my heart out, Old School Essentials is not perfect. In fact, it's probably not going to be for everyone. The game's capacity only covers BX DnD. It doesn't expand into the rest of the acronyms. So no high-level play, no playing as gods, no immortal play. So you're not going to get any of that. I highly recommend just finding the rules cyclopedia and going about your day from there. Also, while the base game is excellent for classic OSE play, it might be a real hard adjustment for players who are used to more mechanical depth with games like Pathfinder 2nd Edition and D&D 5th Edition. Furthermore, if you want games that are not so reliant on dice systems or are more focused telling a specific narrative or are more character driven, then you might be better with a PBTA adjacent game or a no dice, no master. Despite that, OSE has its own identity, being a restatement of BX. It's not trying to impress you with its wondrous art, though there is plenty of that recalls the grand days of BX DnD, and it's not trying to maintain some sort of grandiose fame like 5th edition, whether it's a 2014 version or 2024 edition. It's not trying to be gaudy, gross, or extremely violent like Morkborg or Cyborg or any of the board games. It's not inherently trying to be utilitarian and resource heavy like Stars Without Number, Worlds Without Number, or Ashes Without Number by Kevin Crawford. And it's not trying to be over the top and appeal to more modern D&D enjoyers like DCC or Shadow Dark. It's simple, well kept, familiar, but experimental at times. Now, if I were to summarize what OSE is, give it a sort of allegory, I'd call it a rock. Now, OSR games overall are gems and treasure. The treasure has value depending on who finds it. Whether you are a jeweler or a cutthroat adventurer, some shine bright while others shine dim. Some are beautiful and shining, lovely art, stylization, and themes. Other gems use colors, typography, and layout to suck you in. For the ones that have eclectic tastes, the treasure might be covered in sea salt, maybe the blood of your enemies, or maybe a heart of gold. There is so much treasure, and everyone can find their own experience in the OSR community. Old School Essentials, on the other, is solid and firm. You know what it is. It's just a rock. But a rock, with any smart adventurer, can be the tool that gets you to those lovely emeralds and gems. It can make a fire when you're camping out in the wilderness. It can be set to lay a trap for unfortunate adventurers. It can be used to create a weapon in dire circumstances. It can be used to barter with some dumb merchant or charismatic thief. It can be tossed as a distraction to escape ravenous dogs or the guards when you may have stolen something from town. One could use a rock as ammo in a sling to destroy an enemy's skull, open a passageway to treasure. Finally, a rock can simply be a rock that is passed on the roadside to another dungeon. You know what happens to a rock when it's underneath pressure or in the right hands? It becomes a gem that inspires others to share their adventure. That is what OSE and subsequently BX represent. A resource, game, that everyone comes to at some point, whether it be by happen chance or intentional. It might be simple, but its simplicity, I think, captures the principles of OSR games. And for that, for representing the positives and negatives of BX DnD in a new light for a modern audience, I am deeply appreciated. If it weren't for this game, I wouldn't have gotten into playing OSR games more frequently, and it's one of the great games that I play pretty much weekly with some people. With that in mind, if you're interested in trying OSE and all the games and resources I mentioned below, or in this video, please check down below in the description box. Hopefully, carry a torch on your way down there. And when you are done, why don't you take a seat in that lovely starship over there, because I have a video on stars right numbered if you want to travel to a star system that's an OSR twist. And last but not least, special shout out to my Patreon supporters, Harrison Parker and Paul Volpe, for your continued support on this channel. You too can support me on Patreon with a monthly donation if you'd like over here at patreon.com/blurdydisposition. Or you can do a one-time donation at my Ko-fi over here. And as always, I'm your average everyday queer OSE enjoyer. Blurdy disposition. You all have an awesome journey.